The first sound Daniel heard in 731 days was the mechanical beep of a heart monitor. His eyelids felt like concrete slabs, each flutter requiring strength he didn't possess. When his vision finally focused, he saw white ceiling tiles with water stains shaped like continents he'd never visit. The air tasted sterile, metallic, like breathing through aluminum foil. A nurse gasped somewhere to his left, dropping her clipboard. The clatter echoed through the sterile room like gunfire, and Daniel's body tried to flinch but couldn't remember how. "Mr. Patterson! Daniel! Can you hear me?" Her voice trembled with disbelief, pitching higher with each syllable. She pressed a red button on the wall 3 times, her hands shaking so badly the plastic cracked under her palm. Within seconds, the room flooded with medical staff in navy scrubs, their shoes squeaking against linoleum as they surrounded his bed like he was a miracle they needed to dissect. A doctor with silver-rimmed glasses leaned over him, shining a penlight that felt like staring into the sun. Daniel's pupils contracted, and the doctor inhaled sharply. "Squeeze my hand if you understand me," the doctor said, his professional calm barely masking wonder. Daniel's fingers twitched, barely. The movement was so small it might have been imagined, but the doctor's eyes widened like he'd witnessed resurrection. "Get Dr. Morrison, now. This is extraordinary." The next hours blurred together in a haze of examinations, questions he couldn't answer, and faces he didn't recognize. Physical therapy would take months, they said. His muscles had atrophied to the point where lifting his arm felt like bench-pressing concrete. His memory would be fragmented, Swiss cheese full of holes where birthdays and conversations used to live. But he was alive, against impossible odds, against medical science and probability, and the quiet resignation in his charts. He was alive. When the room finally emptied and visiting hours ended, Daniel managed to rasp out a single word that had been clawing at his throat since consciousness returned. "Where?" He coughed, his voice like sandpaper on rust, like vocal cords that had forgotten their purpose. "Where's Sarah?" Before we continue with what happens next, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. The night nurse, a woman named Patricia with kind eyes and graying temples, pulled a chair close to his bed. The vinyl seat wheezed under her weight. She took a breath that told him everything before she spoke, the kind of breath people take before delivering news that changes everything. "Mr. Patterson, you've been unconscious for 2 years. A lot has changed." The words hit him like a second collision. 2 years. 731 days of missing time, of a world that kept spinning without him. Patricia explained it slowly, gently, like placing glass figurines on a table that might collapse. Sarah had stayed for 6 months, sleeping in the chair beside his bed, holding his hand during every procedure, whispering stories about their wedding and the house they'd planned to buy. But the doctors had been clear. The chances of recovery were less than 3%. Eventually, the hospital bills stacked higher than hope. Eventually, her grief calcified into acceptance. Daniel's parents came in from Arizona every weekend for the first year, his mother reading him chapters from Louis L'Amour westerns he'd loved as a kid, his father just sitting in silence with his hand on Daniel's shoulder, then every other weekend, then once a month. His brother Jason visited on birthdays and holidays, bringing cupcakes Daniel couldn't eat, and updates about a nephew born while Daniel was floating in darkness. His friends from the construction company stopped by less and less, until they stopped altogether. Big Mike came the most at first, bringing sports magazines and rambling about projects Daniel should have been working on. But even Big Mike's visits dwindled to nothing by month 9. Life demanded their attention. Mortgages and marriages and children who asked why Uncle Daniel never woke up. Sarah remarried 14 months ago to a dentist named Robert, who'd never make her wait in hospital corridors. His parents moved to a retirement community in Scottsdale, where the weather didn't hurt their arthritis. His apartment had been cleared out 8 months prior, belongings packed into boxes and stored in a climate-controlled facility across town, gathering dust like artifacts from an extinct civilization. Everyone thought. Patricia paused, choosing her words with the care of a bomb technician selecting wires. The doctors didn't expect you to wake up. Your family had to move forward. They had to grieve and rebuild. I'm so sorry. Daniel wanted to feel anger, betrayal, something sharp and hot that would burn through the fog in his mind. Instead, he felt hollow. 2 years erased like chalk from a blackboard. Everyone gone. He closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling him under like a riptide, and dreamed of nothing. The next morning, Dr. Morrison visited with a psychiatrist named Dr. Reeves, who wore a cardigan that smelled like vanilla and asked questions Daniel didn't have answers to. They explained the challenges ahead, the rehabilitation timeline stretching months into the distance, the reality of his situation painted in clinical terms that felt like listening to his own obituary. When they left, Daniel stared at the window where grey November rain streaked the glass in rivulets that looked like tears. He'd gone under in spring. Cherry blossoms had just started blooming when the truck hit him. Patricia appeared in the doorway that afternoon, her expression peculiar. A mix of hesitation and curiosity played across her features. "There's something I need to show you." "Can you handle a wheelchair?" She helped him into the chair with practiced efficiency, his legs useless as rope, muscles that had forgotten their purpose. The transfer left him breathless and sweating. They moved through sterile corridors lined with motivational posters about perseverance that felt like cruel jokes. As they approached the main entrance, Patricia slowed. Her hand tightened on the wheelchair handle. "He's been here every day," she said quietly. "Security tried to remove him hundreds of times. We called animal control 14 times in the first month alone. They'd take him to the shelter, and he'd escape and be back here by morning. Nothing worked. He always came back." Through the glass doors, Daniel saw him, a German shepherd, massive and scarred, sitting perfectly still on the concrete walkway like a bronze statue. His coat was matted despite obvious attempts at grooming, patches of fur missing where old wounds had healed poorly. His ribs showed through his sides, each one countable from 20 feet away. But his eyes, those amber eyes that seemed to hold entire libraries of loyalty, were locked on the hospital entrance with laser focus that hadn't wavered in 728 days. That's not my dog," Daniel whispered, confusion threading through his exhaustion. "I don't have a dog." "We know," Patricia said quietly. "We checked every database. No microchip matches your name. No one's claimed him, but he won't leave. He's been waiting since 3 days after your accident." Daniel's mind raced through fragmented memories, grasping at pieces of a puzzle scattered across 2 years of darkness. The accident. He'd been driving home from a job site in Tacoma, radio playing classic rock, thinking about the anniversary dinner reservations he'd made for next week. A truck ran a red light. Impact. The world spinning. Glass and metal and the smell of burning rubber. Nothing after that. Just void. "Can I—" His throat tightened, emotion he didn't understand building behind his ribs. "Can I see him closer?" Patricia wheeled him outside. The November air bit through his hospital gown, raising goosebumps across skin that hadn't felt weather in 2 years. Rain misted against his face, cold and real, and proof he was alive. The dog's head turned the instant the doors opened. His entire body went rigid, every muscle taut as bridge cables. For 10 seconds, neither moved. The world held its breath. Then the dog stood, his movements stiff and cautious, like he didn't trust his own hope, like he'd been disappointed before and couldn't survive it happening again. He walked forward with a pronounced limp in his rear leg, each step deliberate. When he reached the wheelchair, he didn't jump or bark or show the exuberance people expect from dogs. He simply pressed his massive head against Daniel's knee and released a sound that wasn't quite a whine, not quite a sigh. It was the sound of a prayer answered, of faith rewarded, of patience validated. Daniel's hand trembled as he touched the dog's head. The fur was coarse, sun-damaged from months of outdoor exposure. Scars crisscrossed his muzzle and ears in patterns that spoke of violence survived. This dog had been through hell and chose to wait in purgatory. "Who are you?" Daniel whispered, fingers tracing the ridge of scar tissue above the dog's left eye. The dog didn't answer, couldn't answer. But his eyes said everything. "I've been waiting. I'll keep waiting. You're worth waiting for." Over the following days, the hospital bent rules they'd never bent before. The dog, whom Daniel started calling Titan because anything smaller seemed insulting, was allowed in the rehabilitation wing during physical therapy sessions. A veterinarian volunteer named Dr. Patel examined him with gentle hands and grave eyes. Approximately 7 years old, military or police training evident in his behavior and response to commands. Old injuries consistent with combat or tactical work, including a healed bullet graze along his ribs. Severe malnutrition from months of inadequate food, but otherwise stable. "Someone trained him extensively," Dr. Patel said, running fingers over Titan's frame with professional assessment. "These scars aren't from abuse or dogfighting. They're from service. This was a working dog. Military or police, I'd stake my license on it." During rehabilitation, Titan never left Daniel's side. When Daniel's legs gave out during walking exercises, leaving him gasping and ashamed on the parallel bars, Titan would position himself as a brace, solid muscle and unwavering presence, allowing Daniel to regain his feet. When nightmares jerked Daniel awake, screaming about impacts and hospitals and abandonment, Titan's weight on his chest grounded him back to reality, his steady heartbeat a metronome pulling Daniel back from the edge. The therapists had never seen anything like it. Marcus, a physical therapist who'd worked at the hospital for 15 years, pulled Patricia aside during week 3. "That dog understands trauma response better than most trained service animals. He anticipates Daniel's needs before Daniel knows he has them. Where did he come from?" Nobody knew. Titan remained a mystery wrapped in loyalty, a ghost with amber eyes and scars that told stories in a language they couldn't read. 3 weeks after waking, Daniel received a visitor he didn't expect. Detective Sarah Chen from the City Police Department, holding a worn folder and wearing an expression that suggested she'd been carrying questions for too long. "Mr. Patterson, I've been waiting 2 years to talk to you." She sat in the chair Patricia usually occupied, the folder resting on her lap like evidence at a trial. "The accident that put you here wasn't an accident. The truck driver who hit you fled the scene immediately. No witnesses came forward willing to testify. The vehicle was found abandoned 3 blocks away, wiped clean. The case went cold within 6 months." Daniel's hands clenched the wheelchair armrests. Sarah had told him the basics, but hearing it from a detective made it real in a way grief hadn't allowed. "You never caught him?" "Not at first," Chen said, "but there was something unusual in the police report that bothered me for months. Something I couldn't let go." She opened the folder, sliding a photo across the table. Daniel's blood turned to ice. It was Titan, younger and healthier, wearing a police K9 vest, standing beside a man in uniform with cold blue eyes. "A K9 unit responded to the scene the night of your accident. Officer Marcus Webb and his partner, a German shepherd named Titan." She tapped the photo. "This was them 18 months before your accident." Daniel looked down at Titan, who was watching him with those knowing amber eyes, and something clicked into place. The military precision in his movements, the scars, the unwavering loyalty to a stranger. "Webb was driving the truck that hit you," Chen continued, her voice hardening with the anger of a detective who'd had to watch justice delayed. "We suspected it from the beginning, but couldn't prove it. He reported Titan as run away 2 weeks after your accident, filed all the paperwork, acted devastated. We found Webb's truck, the actual one that hit you, in a chop shop 6 months later, but he'd already moved to Mexico. The case fell apart without witnesses or physical evidence tying him to the scene." The room felt too small suddenly. Daniel's hands found Titan's head, fingers curling into the thick fur like an anchor. "Why would a police officer—" "He was drunk," Chen said bluntly. "Blood alcohol level came back at .19 when he finally surrendered himself to Mexican authorities last month. He'd been drinking at his ex-wife's house. They'd had a fight. He took the K9 unit vehicle even though he wasn't on duty, ran the light at Miller and 3rd, hit you going 60 in a 35 zone. Daniel remembered none of it, just the before and the after, with 2 years of nothing between. But here's what we didn't know until Webb's dashcam footage was recovered from the chop shop last month. Chen pulled out another document, this one with still frames from video. He wasn't supposed to have Titan that night. The dog was scheduled for retirement processing the next morning. Webb was driving him home for one last night together. The frames showed the moment of impact from the truck's perspective. Then Webb getting out, stumbling toward Daniel's crumpled car. Then Titan launching from the truck bed, teeth bared. The footage shows Webb trying to check if you were alive, and Titan attacked him. Bit clean through his left forearm, 16 stitches. The dog refused to leave your side until the ambulance arrived. Protected you like you were his handler, like you were worth dying for. Chen's voice softened. When Webb tried to drag Titan away, the dog nearly took his hand off. That's when Webb panicked, realized he was drunk, driving a city vehicle, with a police dog refusing commands. He drove off and abandoned Titan at the scene. Figured the dog would find his way back to the station eventually. Daniel couldn't speak. Couldn't process the weight of what he was hearing. Titan had chosen him over his handler, had chosen loyalty to a stranger over obedience to the man who'd raised him, had chosen to wait for Daniel to wake up rather than return to the life he'd known. "Webb's been extradited," Chen added. "Your testimony, combined with the dashcam evidence and our investigation, will put him away for vehicular assault, fleeing the scene, DUI, and animal abandonment. The department wants to know if you'd be willing to formally adopt Titan. He's officially retired from service as of this morning." Daniel looked at Titan, who was looking back with an expression that needed no translation. Two souls abandoned by everyone they'd trusted. Two survivors of the same nightmare, found family in the wreckage of what should have killed them both. "Yes," Daniel managed, his voice thick with emotion he'd thought himself too hollowed out to feel. "Yes, absolutely yes." The adoption paperwork was completed by Christmas. Daniel's physical therapy accelerated with Titan as his constant companion and motivation. When Daniel wanted to quit, Titan's presence reminded him someone had waited 728 days. The least Daniel could do was walk. The hospital social worker, a woman named Jennifer with efficient hands and a soft heart, helped him find a small house with a yard, funded partially by the lawsuit settlement against Webb and the city. Sarah, his ex-wife, sent a card saying she was happy he'd made it, included a photo of her and Robert and their new baby. She didn't visit. Daniel understood. His parents called weekly now, guilty and relieved in equal measure, talking about coming up for Thanksgiving next year. Jason promised to visit with the kids when spring came. Big Mike showed up one Tuesday with a six-pack and stories about the company, offering Daniel his job back when he was ready. Daniel didn't need them the way he'd once thought he would. He had Titan, and Titan had him. That was enough. On moving day, 6 months after waking up, Daniel stood in the doorway of their new home. A small craftsman bungalow with creaky floors and a fenced yard, big enough for a dog who'd forgotten what grass felt like. The paint was peeling, the roof needed work, but it was theirs. Titan walked in first, his limp barely noticeable now after surgery, the settlement money paid for, his coat glossy from proper nutrition and the lamb and rice food Dr. Patel recommended. He checked every room with professional thoroughness, then returned to Daniel's side, tail wagging slowly. "We made it, buddy," Daniel said, kneeling with effort to wrap his arms around the dog who'd refused to give up on him when every logical reason said he should. "We actually made it." Titan licked his face, then walked to the window facing the street. He sat down in the sunlight that streamed through glass that wasn't reinforced or institutional, finally relaxed, no longer waiting, no longer watching for someone who might wake up. Just home. Just finally, impossibly home. That night, Daniel dreamed for the first time since the accident. Not nightmares of impact and hospital machines and isolation, but of the future, of morning walks where his legs remembered how to work, of coffee on the porch while Titan dozed in the sun, of teaching an old soldier new tricks that had nothing to do with combat or commands, of healing together, two broken pieces forming something stronger than either had been alone. When he woke, Titan was sprawled across the foot of the bed, snoring gently, one paw twitching in dreams Daniel hoped were better than the memories. Daniel's hand rested on his back, feeling the steady rise and fall of breath. The scars under his palm told stories of loyalty that transcended reason. The doctors said he'd lost 2 years, but looking at the dog who'd given him a reason to fight through the pain, who'd shown him what loyalty looked like when everyone else had let go, who'd sat at a hospital door for 728 days because some bonds don't understand abandonment, Daniel thought maybe he'd found something more valuable than the time he'd lost. He'd found proof that some connections transcend logic. That sometimes the family you need isn't the one you had, but the one that refuses to leave. That love isn't always loud or convenient or expected. Sometimes it's just a scarred dog sitting at a hospital door waiting for a stranger to come home. And after 731 days of waiting, of faith tested and rewarded, of loyalty proven in the only language that matters, they both finally had. They were home.